Miss Monroe, if I wanted the opinion of someone mediocre, I would have consulted the intern. Your presence here is a joke that the legal department decided to play on me. The words echoed through the 47th floor conference room like a slap in the face. I felt my face burn, not with shame, but with a rage so pure that my fingers trembled around the document folder I was holding. It was my first day at Sterling & Associates, Manhattan's largest corporate consulting firm, and Richard Blackwood, the billionaire CEO with 51% of the shares and a reputation for destroying careers before breakfast, had just humiliated me in front of 15 executives. I should have lowered my head, should have swallowed hard, and accepted it. All the other 23 female lawyers who sat in that chair before me did exactly that, and all of them requested transfers in less than a month. But I'm not all the others. Mr. Blackwood, my voice came out firmer than I expected, cutting through the awkward silence in the room. With all due respect, which is also none, your analysis of the merger contract with Prometheus Tech is incorrect. Clause 14B that you insist on approving will cost the company $38 million in regulatory penalties. I didn't come here to be decorative. I came here to save your company from your own ego. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard Blackwood stood up slowly, his storm-colored eyes fixed on me with an intensity that would make any sensible person back down. He had that cruel beauty of someone who never heard the word no. Square jaw, jet black hair perfectly slicked back, a custom-made suit that probably cost more than my car. At 34, he was Wall Street's youngest and most ruthless CEO. "Repeat that," he said, his voice dangerously low. I swallowed hard, but maintained eye contact. "Your analysis is wrong, sir. And if you sign that contract tomorrow as planned, the company will face a federal lawsuit that will make the merger unviable." For a second, just 1 second, I saw something pass through his eyes. Surprise? Interest? Then the mask returned, cold and impenetrable. "My office, now." He left the meeting like a storm, and I followed him, feeling all the pitying looks from the executives glued to my back. My colleague Vivienne, who helped me adapt in the morning, made a discreet "you're dead" gesture. Maybe I was. But when I entered his presidential office, all glass, black leather, and a privileged view of Central Park, and Richard closed the door behind us, something changed in the air. He turned, leaned against the desk, crossed his arms, and for the first time, really looked at me. "Show me where I was wrong." I blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "Clause 14B. Show me the error." "You have 5 minutes before I fire you for insubordination and arrogance." But there was a different gleam in his eyes now, a challenge. I took a deep breath, opened my folder, and spread the documents across his desk. And that's how it began. The next 45 minutes were the most intense of my professional life. Richard Blackwood wasn't just smart, he was brilliant. As I walked him through each subclause, each regulatory reference, each precedent that supported my argument, he absorbed everything with a speed that was almost inhuman. He interrupted with sharp questions, challenged my interpretations, tested every weak point in my reasoning. But I held my ground. "Here," I pointed to a specific paragraph. "The SEC modified this regulation in March. Your legal team is working with the old version. If you proceed with Clause 14B as written, Prometheus Tech can claim non-compliance and trigger the penalty clause. $38 million, minimum." Richard leaned over the documents, so close I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that made my traitorous brain momentarily forget he was the enemy. His finger traced the lines I'd highlighted. "How did you catch this?" His voice had lost its hostile edge, replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. "I spent my first 3 hours this morning reading every single regulatory update from the past 6 months, while everyone else was gossiping about who you'd fire first." I couldn't help the slight edge in my voice. He looked up, and our eyes met. For the first time, I saw him without the armor, just a man who'd been challenged and found someone worthy of the challenge. You read 300 pages of regulatory updates on your first day? 347, actually. The coffee in the break room is terrible, by the way. I needed something to keep me awake. The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. The coffee has been terrible for 6 years. No one's ever complained. Maybe they were too afraid of you. And you're not? I gathered my documents, sliding them back into my folder with deliberate calm. I'm terrified, Mr. Blackwood, but I'm more terrified of being mediocre. So if you're going to fire me, at least I go out knowing I was right. Richard Blackwood straightened up, his full 6'3" height towering over my 5'7" frame, but I didn't step back. I'd learned a long time ago that powerful men respected confidence more than submission. I'm not going to fire you, Miss Monroe. My heart, which had been hammering against my ribs, skipped a beat. You're not? No. I'm going to make you lead counsel on the Prometheus merger. If you're right, and I suspect you are, you just saved this company from a catastrophic mistake. If you're wrong, he paused, and that dangerous smile finally appeared. Well, then you'll wish I had fired you today. I'm not wrong. We'll see. The merger meeting is rescheduled for Friday. You have 4 days to rebuild this entire contract. I expect it on my desk by Thursday night, and it better be flawless. It will be. Good. Now get out of my office before I remember how much I hate being contradicted. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me at the door. Miss Monroe? Yes, sir? What's your first name? The question caught me off guard. In 6 hours at Sterling & Associates, no one had asked my first name. I was just the new lawyer, or Monroe, or that girl who's about to get destroyed by Blackwood. Harper, I said. Harper Monroe. He nodded slowly, as if filing that information somewhere important in his mind. Welcome to Sterling & Associates, Harper. Try not to make a habit of being right. It's bad for my reputation. I left his office with my head held high, ignoring the shocked faces of the executives who were still lingering in the hallway, clearly expecting to see me in tears or escorted out by security. Vivian rushed to my side the moment I reached my new office, a tiny glass box that barely fit a desk and 2 chairs. Oh my God, you're alive. What happened? We all thought... I'm lead counsel on the Prometheus merger, I said, still trying to process it myself. Vivian's jaw dropped. You're what? Harper, that's the biggest deal of the year. Partners have been fighting for that position for months. How did you... I told him he was wrong. Yeah, and he didn't kill you? He gave me 4 days to fix his mistake. Vivian sank into one of my chairs, looking at me like I'd grown a second head. Girl, I don't know if you're brave or insane. Probably both. Do you have any idea what you just signed up for? Richard Blackwood doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. If you screw this up, I won't screw it up. But as I sat down at my desk and looked at the mountain of work ahead of me, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that I might have just made the biggest mistake of my life, or the best decision. With Richard Blackwood, it was impossible to tell the difference. 72 hours. That's how long I'd been awake when Richard Blackwood walked into my office at 3 in the morning without knocking. You look terrible, he said, setting a paper cup of coffee on my desk. Real coffee, not the sludge from the break room. The expensive kind that probably came from his private espresso machine. I looked up from my laptop, bleary-eyed and definitely not at my best. My hair was in a messy bun, my blazer was draped over my chair, and I was pretty sure I had mascara smudged under my eyes. Good morning to you too, Mr. Blackwood. Most people use doors in a more conventional way. Most people don't work through the night 3 days in a row. He pulled up the chair across from me and sat down, looking infuriatingly perfect in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater. Apparently, billionaire CEOs were allowed to dress casually at 3 a.m. It's Thursday. The contract is due at 5 p.m. You have 14 hours. I'm aware of the deadline. I said it, remember? Then why are you still here instead of sleeping? I took a sip of the coffee. It was perfect. Exactly how I liked it. and tried not to think about how he knew my coffee order. Because Clause 23 is fighting me. The tax implications of the asset transfer don't align with the new regulatory framework. I've rewritten it 6 times. Richard leaned forward, and I caught that scent again. Cedar and something darker, more complex. Focus, Harper. Show me. For the next hour, we sat side by side, our shoulders occasionally brushing as we pored over documents. Richard Blackwood, the ruthless CEO, disappeared, replaced by someone who genuinely loved the intellectual challenge. He questioned my reasoning, offered alternatives, and twice, admitted I'd found a better solution than his. "You're enjoying this," I said, watching him scribble notes in the margin of a printout. "Enjoying what?" "Not being the smartest person in the room." He looked up, and there was something dangerous in his smile. "Careful, Miss Monroe. Your arrogance is showing. I learned from the best." "Touché." He stood up, stretching his tall frame, and I definitely didn't notice the way his sweater rode up slightly. Definitely not. "Finish the contract. I'll have lunch sent up at noon." "I don't need you to babysit me." "I'm not babysitting. I'm protecting my investment. You're worth more to me conscious than collapsed on your keyboard." He paused at the door. "And Harper, that coffee order. 2 shots espresso, splash of oat milk, no sugar. I pay attention to details. It's how I built an empire." He left before I could respond, and I sat there, heart racing, wondering if Richard Blackwood had just flirted with me or threatened me. With him, it was impossible to tell the difference. By 4:30 p.m., the contract was done. 347 pages of legal perfection. I printed it, bound it, and walked to Richard's office with my head held high and my knees shaking. His assistant, Patricia, a stern woman in her 50s who'd been with Richard for a decade, actually smiled at me. "He's waiting for you. Go right in." Richard was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Mandarin. He held up one finger, gesturing for me to wait, and continued his conversation while I tried not to stare at his profile against the Manhattan skyline. He hung up and turned to me. "Is that my contract?" "It's your flawless contract, yes." I handed it to him, and he immediately sat down and began reading. Not skimming, actually reading. Every word, every clause. I stood there, feeling like a student waiting for a professor to grade her thesis. 20 minutes passed, then 30. My feet hurt in my heels, but I refused to show weakness. Finally, Richard looked up. His expression was unreadable. "There's a typo on page 123. My stomach dropped. "What?" "I'm joking." And then Richard Blackwood did something I'd never seen him do. He laughed. Actually laughed. "You should see your face right now." "That's not funny." "It's a little funny." He stood up, closing the contract. "This is exceptional work, Harper. Better than exceptional. You've not only fixed my mistakes, you've improved the entire structure of the deal. Prometheus Tech is going to sign this tomorrow, and they'll be grateful for it." I felt warmth spread through my chest. Pride, relief, and something else I didn't want to examine too closely. "Does this mean I passed your test?" "You didn't just pass. You exceeded every expectation." He walked around his desk, stopping directly in front of me. Too close. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "I'm promoting you to senior associate, effective immediately. I've been here 4 days. And you've done what most lawyers can't do in 4 years. You stood up to me, you were right. And you delivered perfection under pressure. Those are the only 3 things that matter in this firm. What about the other 23 female lawyers who sat in my chair?" The question came out before I could stop it. Did they get the same chance? Something flickered across Richard's face. Regret, maybe, or shame. "No," he said quietly. "They didn't, because I didn't give them one. I tested them, set them up to fail, and when they did, I confirmed my own bias that they weren't good enough." He paused. "You're the first person who refused to fail." who made me question whether the problem was them or me. And what conclusion did you reach? That I've been an arrogant bastard who wasted exceptional talent because of my own insecurities. He stepped back, creating distance again. I can't undo the past, but I can change the future, starting with you. I didn't know what to say to that. Richard Blackwood, admitting fault, showing vulnerability. This was more dangerous than his cruelty. Don't look at me like that, he said. Like what? Like I'm human. It ruins my reputation. I smiled despite myself. Your secret's safe with me, Mr. Blackwood. Richard, he corrected. Senior associates call me Richard. Then you should call me Harper. I already do. His voice dropped lower. When you're not around. The air between us charged with something electric, something that had been building since that first confrontation in the conference room. This was dangerous territory. He was my boss, my ruthless, complicated, brilliant boss, who was looking at me like I was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. I should go, I said, though I didn't move. Yes, he agreed, but didn't step back. You should. Neither of us moved. Patricia's voice crackled through the intercom, shattering the moment. Richard, your 7 o'clock is here. He blinked, the spell broken. Send them in. He turned back to me, his professional mask sliding back into place. Congratulations, Senior Associate Munro. Don't make me regret this. I won't. Good. Now go home. Sleep. You look terrible. Yes, you mentioned that. I was going to say beautiful, actually, but terrible works too. He said it so casually, so matter-of-factly, that I almost missed it. Almost. But when I replayed those words later, lying in my bed at 5 a.m., finally sleeping, I realized that Richard Blackwood had just changed everything, and I had no idea what to do about it. The Prometheus Tech merger closed successfully on Friday afternoon, and Richard threw a celebration party at his penthouse that evening. Mandatory attendance, according to the company-wide email. I spent 2 hours trying to find something appropriate to wear before settling on a black cocktail dress that was professional enough to not seem like I was trying too hard, but fitted enough to remind everyone I was a woman, not just a lawyer. Vivienne Wolf whistled when she picked me up. Damn, girl, you're playing with fire. I'm going to a work party, not a seduction. Richard Blackwood's penthouse, open bar, you in that dress? That's not a work party. That's a disaster waiting to happen. She wasn't wrong. Richard's penthouse was everything you'd expect from a billionaire with more money than sense. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my law school tuition, and a collection of modern art that belonged in a museum. The space was filled with Sterling and Associates employees, all dressed to impress, all drinking expensive champagne, all pretending they weren't trying to get closer to the man of the hour. I found Richard on the terrace, alone, staring out at the city lights. He'd ditched his suit jacket, and his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that had no business being that distracting. He looked younger like this, less like the ruthless CEO and more like a regular man who just happened to own half of Manhattan. Hiding from your own party? I asked, stepping beside him. He turned, and his eyes did a slow, deliberate scan from my heels to my face. You wore red lipstick. Is that against company policy? It should be. It's dangerously distracting. He handed me a glass of champagne. You did well this week, Harper. The client specifically requested you for their next acquisition. Already trying to work me to death again? Always. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something was bothering him. What's wrong? What makes you think something's wrong? You're hiding on your own terrace, nursing whiskey instead of champagne, and you've had that line between your eyebrows for the past 30 seconds. Either something's wrong or you're constipated. I'm hoping it's the former. He laughed, that real laugh I'd only heard once before. You're too observant for your own good. Occupational hazard. So what is it? Richard was quiet for a long moment, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. The board is concerned about my image. Apparently, ruthless tyrant doesn't poll well with potential investors. They want me to appear more approachable, human. You are human, mostly. That's generous. He took a drink. They're suggesting I get a girlfriend, someone appropriate, someone who makes me look stable and less likely to destroy companies for sport. My stomach twisted uncomfortably. Are you asking me to set you up? No. He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his storm gray eyes made my breath catch. I'm asking you to pretend to be my girlfriend. I nearly dropped my champagne. You're insane. Probably. But hear me out. We work well together. We have chemistry. Chemistry? Don't pretend you haven't felt it, Harper. I know you have because I have, and I'm not in the habit of misreading people. He stepped closer. This would be mutually beneficial. You get elevated status in the firm, access to clients and cases that would take years to reach otherwise. I get a girlfriend who's brilliant, beautiful, and actually understands what I do for a living. This is the worst idea you've ever had. I've had worse. I once tried to short the European market. Richard. It would just be for public appearances. Charity galas, investor dinners, nothing more intimate than what we've already been doing. Just with cameras present. His voice softened. I'm not asking you to actually date me, Harper. I know I'm not exactly boyfriend material. I'm just asking you to pretend. There it was, that vulnerability again, carefully hidden behind pragmatism. Richard Blackwood, the man who had everything, admitting he needed help with the one thing money couldn't buy. Genuine human connection. Why me? I asked quietly. You could have any woman in New York. Because you're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen both the monster and the man. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. And because when you stood up to me in that conference room, you weren't intimidated or impressed by my money or power. You just wanted me to be better. No one's ever asked that of me before. This was dangerous. This was so far beyond dangerous, it was catastrophic. But looking at Richard, really looking at him, I saw something I recognized. Loneliness. The kind that comes from being so far above everyone else that you forget what it's like to be on solid ground. If I agree to this absolutely insane plan, we need rules. Hope flashed across his face. Name them. 1. This is strictly professional. No real feelings. No complications. 2. We tell no one the truth except Vivian, because I need at least one person to talk me down when I inevitably panic. 3. The moment either of us wants out, we're out. No questions asked. And 4. You stop calling me Miss Monroe when we're alone. If I'm going to be your fake girlfriend, you should at least use my first name consistently. Richard smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Deal. Though I should warn you, I'm a terrible boyfriend, even a fake one. I'm a terrible girlfriend. I work too much, I'm stubborn, and I have a cat named Litigation who hates everyone. You named your cat Litigation? He's vindictive and expensive. It fits. I think I'm going to enjoy this arrangement more than I should. Richard extended his hand. So, Harper Monroe, will you be my fake girlfriend? I looked at his hand, then at his face, then back at his hand. This was either the smartest or stupidest decision of my life, and I wouldn't know which until it was too late. I shook his hand. I'm going to regret this. Probably. His fingers tightened around mine. But at least we'll regret it together. From inside the penthouse, someone called Richard's name. He didn't let go of my hand immediately, and neither did I. For just a moment, we stood there on the terrace, the city sprawling beneath us, both of us pretending this was just business, both of us knowing it was already something more. Should we tell people tonight? I asked. Might as well start the performance. He lifted our joined hands. Ready to be the envy of every woman in Manhattan? Ready to be psychoanalyzed by every gossip column in the city? They're going to say you're a gold digger. They're going to say you have a soul. Which one of us has it worse? He laughed and pulled me back inside, his hand warm and solid around mine. As we walked into the party together, I felt every eye turn toward us, felt the whispers start like wildfire. Vivian caught my eye from across the room, her expression a mix of shock and, "What the hell did you just do?" I gave her a helpless shrug. I'd just agreed to fake date Richard Blackwood. What could possibly go wrong? Our first official date was a disaster waiting to happen, and it hadn't even started yet. "I can't believe I'm doing this," I muttered, staring at my reflection in the full-length mirror. The emerald green gown Richard's stylist had sent over fit perfectly, which was annoying because I wanted to hate everything about this situation. Vivian lounged on my bed, eating popcorn like she was watching a reality show. "You're fake dating a billionaire and complaining about wearing a dress that costs more than our rent. I have zero sympathy for you." He sent a stylist, Viv. A stylist. Like I don't know how to dress myself. To be fair, your work wardrobe consists of 5 identical black suits. They're professional. They're boring. She threw a piece of popcorn at me. Live a little. Wear the pretty dress. Let the gorgeous billionaire parade you around Manhattan. Some of us would kill for this problem. The doorbell rang, and my stomach dropped. He's early. He's punctual. There's a difference. Vivian jumped up and practically ran to the door. "I need to see this." Richard Blackwood stood in my doorway in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, holding a bouquet of peonies, my favorite flowers, though I'd never told him that. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, and for a moment, the mask slipped. "You look stunning," he said, and it didn't sound like an act. "You clean up okay yourself." I took the flowers, trying to ignore how my hands trembled slightly. "How did you know peonies were my favorite?" "I asked Patricia to research you. She's very thorough." "That's not creepy at all. I prefer adequately prepared." He offered his arm. "Ready to convince Manhattan's elite that I'm capable of human emotion?" "As ready as I'll ever be." Vivian gave me a thumbs up as we left, mouthing, "Call me later," with entirely too much enthusiasm. The charity gala was being held at the plaza, and the moment we stepped out of Richard's Bentley, camera flashes exploded around us. I instinctively moved closer to him, and his arm wrapped around my waist, solid and protective. "Smile," he murmured against my ear. "And remember, you're madly in love with me. That's going to require some serious acting skills. You went to law school, same thing." Despite myself, I laughed, and the cameras went wild. Tomorrow's headlines would probably say something ridiculous like, "Ice King melts for mystery woman," or equally absurd. Inside the ballroom, Richard was immediately swarmed by investors, board members, and society figures who all wanted a piece of his attention. But his hand never left my waist, and every few minutes he'd glance at me like he was checking to make sure I was still there. "Richard, darling." A woman in her 50s with diamonds that could fund a small country descended upon us. Margaret Hartford. I recognized her from Forbes. Old money, major shareholder. "You must introduce me to your companion." The rumor mill has been absolutely buzzing. "Margaret, this is Harper Monroe, my girlfriend. Harper, Margaret Hartford." "Girlfriend?" Margaret's eyes sharpened with interest. "How delightful. And what do you do, dear?" "I'm a senior associate at Sterling & Associates," I said, shaking her hand firmly. "Corporate law, specializing in mergers and acquisitions." "Oh." Her tone cooled instantly. "So you work for Richard?" "With Richard," I corrected, keeping my smile pleasant. "I was recently promoted after successfully restructuring the Prometheus Tech merger." "How convenient." The implication was clear. Gold digger, social climber, sleeping her way to the top. I felt Richard tense beside me, but I squeezed his arm gently. I could fight my own battles. "Mrs. Hartford, I respect your concern for Richard, but I didn't date him for his money. I have my own career. I didn't date him for his connections. I earned my position through 70-hour work weeks. I'm dating him because underneath the ruthless CEO exterior, he's actually funny, brilliant, and occasionally kind. Though don't tell anyone that last part. It'll ruin his reputation. Margaret blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Then, surprisingly, she laughed. I like you. You've got spine. Richard needs someone who won't let him steamroll them. She patted his arm. Don't screw this up, dear boy. Women like this don't come around often. As she walked away, Richard stared at me with something I couldn't quite identify. You defended me. You looked like you were about to commit homicide. I was preventing a murder. No one's ever defended me before. They usually just agree with whatever accusation is thrown. Well, get used to it. If I'm going to be your fake girlfriend, I'm going to be a convincing one. His expression shifted, became more intense. Harper! Richard, there you are! A man in his 40s approached, hand extended. James Chen, Hartford Industries. We met at the summit last year? And just like that, Richard was pulled back into business mode. But his hand found mine under the table during dinner, his thumb tracing circles on my palm in a gesture that felt far too intimate for something fake. The evening blurred into a series of introductions, forced smiles, and careful navigation of social politics. Richard was a master at it, charming when needed, ruthless when necessary, always calculating 3 moves ahead. But every so often I'd catch him looking at me with that same unreadable expression, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that kept changing shape. After dinner, a string quartet started playing, and couples drifted toward the dance floor. We should dance, Richard said. People are watching. I'm a terrible dancer. I'm an excellent dancer. I'll lead. He pulled me to my feet, his hand settling on the small of my back as he guided me onto the floor. He wasn't lying. Richard moved with the same confidence he brought to everything else, leading me through the steps with such ease that even my clumsy feet managed not to embarrass us. You're full of surprises, I said as we turned. Mandarin, dancing, knowing my favorite flowers. I'm a man of many talents. He spun me out and back, pulling me closer than strictly necessary. Though I'll admit, you've surprised me more in 3 weeks than anyone has in 3 years. How so? You see me, not Richard Blackwood, the CEO, not the billionaire, not the monster everyone thinks I am. Just me. His voice dropped lower. It's terrifying and addicting at the same time. My heart was racing, and I couldn't blame it on the dancing. Richard, we agreed. I know what we agreed. No real feelings, strictly professional. His gray eyes locked onto mine. I'm trying, Harper. I'm really trying. But pretending with you is becoming the most honest thing I do. The song ended, but neither of us moved. We stood there in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by hundreds of people, completely lost in each other. We should stop, I whispered. We should, he agreed. Neither of us did. Someone bumped into us, breaking the spell. Richard stepped back, his professional mask sliding firmly into place. I should get you home. Early meeting tomorrow. The drive back to my apartment was silent, charged with everything we weren't saying. When we arrived, Richard walked me to my door like a proper gentleman. Thank you for tonight, he said. You were perfect. I was acting. So was I. But the way he looked at me said otherwise. I unlocked my door, then turned back. Richard? What Margaret said, about not screwing this up. Harper, don't. We need to be careful. This arrangement, it's already getting complicated. I know. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. But some complications are worth the risk. He left before I could respond, and I stood in my doorway, watching his taillights disappear down the street, knowing with absolute certainty that I was in serious trouble. Because somewhere between fake smiles and practiced touches, I'd started falling for Richard Blackwood. And that wasn't part of the plan at all. 3 weeks into our fake relationship, and I was lying to everyone, including myself. You're glowing, Vivian said, studying me across our lunch table. That's not a fake relationship glow. That's a real feelings glow. I'm not glowing. I'm stressed. You're falling for him. I stabbed my salad with more force than necessary. I'm not falling for anyone. This is a business arrangement. Harper, I've known you since law school. You organize your bookshelf by publication date and color code your case files. You don't do spontaneous. Yet last week you left work at 5 p.m., to have dinner with Richard at some Italian place in Brooklyn. It was for appearances. There were photographers. In Brooklyn? Girl, please. She leaned forward. When are you going to admit that this stopped being fake about 2 weeks ago? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Richard's name lit up the screen with a message that made my traitorous heart skip. Emergency. Need you at the office. Now. I grabbed my bag and practically ran back to Sterling & Associates, taking the private elevator to the executive floor. Patricia waved me through without a word, her expression grim. Richard's office was in chaos. Papers everywhere, his laptop screen showing what looked like a stock market crash, and Richard himself pacing like a caged wolf. What happened? I asked, closing the door behind me. Victoria happened. He spat the name like poison. My ex-fiancée, she's selling her story to the press, claims I'm emotionally abusive, that our relationship is a publicity stunt to cover up my true nature. She has photos, emails, text messages, all carefully curated to make me look like a monster. My blood ran cold. When does it publish? Tomorrow morning. Front page of the Financial Times. He stopped pacing and looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in Richard Blackwood's eyes. Fear. This will destroy everything. The board will force me out. The company's stock will tank. And you'll be dragged through this mess with me. What does she want? Money. $10 million to kill the story. That's extortion. That's Manhattan. He ran his hands through his hair, destroying its perfect style. Harper, I need to release you from our arrangement. This is going to get ugly, and you don't deserve to be collateral damage in my war. Absolutely not. He blinked. What? I'm not going anywhere. I crossed the room, standing directly in front of him. Is any of what she's saying true? Were you abusive? No. I was cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. All true. But I never raised my hand, never manipulated or controlled her. I was just absent. Too focused on work to be a real partner. His jaw clenched. She wanted the billionaire lifestyle without the billionaire. When I couldn't give her the fairy tale, she left. I thought we ended amicably. Do you have proof the relationship ended well? Texts, emails. She thanked me for being mature about the breakup. Said we'd always be friends. Then we fight back. We don't pay extortion money. We release our own statement with your evidence, show her inconsistencies, and we present a united front. Harper, you don't understand what you're signing up for. They'll dig into your past, question your credentials, call you every name imaginable. Let them. I grabbed his hands, forcing him to focus on me. I'm not some delicate flower who wilts under pressure, Richard. I stood up to you on my first day, remember? I can handle whatever they throw at me. Why? His voice cracked slightly. Why would you risk your reputation for this? For me? Because I love you, I thought. Because somewhere between fake dates and real conversations, you became the most important person in my life. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because it's the right thing to do, I said instead. And because you'd do the same for me. Richard pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. You're either the bravest or most foolish woman I've ever met. Both. Definitely both. He laughed against my hair, and I felt his body relax slightly. We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, and it didn't feel fake at all. Okay, he said finally, pulling back but keeping his hands on my shoulders. We fight. Together. Together. We spent the next 6 hours crafting our response. I called in every favor I had, contacted 3 media lawyers, and prepared a counterattack that would make Victoria regret ever trying to extort Richard Blackwood. At midnight, Richard insisted on driving me home. We were both exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline. You didn't have to do this, he said, as we pulled up to my building. Yes, I did. Harper. He turned to face me, and the vulnerability in his expression nearly broke me. I need to tell you something. My heart hammered. What? This arrangement, this fake relationship, I don't want it to be fake anymore. Time stopped. The entire world narrowed down to the two of us in that car, the confession hanging between us like a live wire. Richard, I know we had rules. I know I'm your boss, and this is complicated and probably a terrible idea. But I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of fake touching you when all I want is the real thing. I'm tired of watching you walk away every night when what I really want is for you to stay. You don't mean that. You're stressed and vulnerable and I'm in love with you. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious fact in the world. I've been in love with you since you told me my coffee was terrible and my ego was worse. Maybe even before that, in that first meeting when you refused to back down. I'm in love with you, Harper Monroe, and I'm done pretending I'm not. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the weight of his words, the truth in his eyes, the impossible reality of this moment. Say something, he whispered. Please. I'm terrified, I admitted. Because I love you too, and that wasn't supposed to happen. Richard's smile was pure joy, unguarded and real. He cupped my face in his hands and kissed me. Not for cameras, not for show, but because we both finally admitted what we'd been fighting for weeks. And it was perfect. The article dropped at 6 a.m., and by 7, my phone was ringing nonstop. Harper Monroe, the opportunistic lawyer who seduced her way into Richard Blackwood's bed and bank account. I read the headline aloud to Vivian, who'd come over the moment she saw the news. They make me sound like a villain in a soap opera. At least they used a good photo of you. She pointed to the sidebar image, me and Richard at the gala, looking at each other like nothing else existed. You can't fake that chemistry. That's not helping, Viv. My phone buzzed again. Richard. Don't read the comments. I'm handling this. Stay home today. I texted back immediately. Absolutely not. I'm coming in. His response was instant. Harper, it's a mob scene down here. Reporters, cameras everywhere. Then they'll see me walk in with my head high. I'm not hiding. 20 minutes later, I stood outside Sterling & Associates, staring at the wall of photographers and reporters blocking the entrance. Richard appeared beside me. He must have been waiting, and immediately took my hand. You're stubborn, he muttered. You're controlling. We're perfect for each other. He almost smiled. Ready? No. Let's go anyway. The moment we stepped forward, the crowd erupted. Microphones shoved in our faces, cameras flashing, voices shouting overlapping questions. Miss Monroe, did you know about his ex-fiancée? Mr. Blackwood, are you paying her to stay? Is this relationship even real? How does it feel being called a gold digger? Richard's arm tightened around my waist, protective and possessive. No comment, he said firmly, cutting through the noise as we pushed toward the entrance. Someone grabbed my arm, and Richard moved so fast I barely saw it, stepping between me and the reporter, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Touch her again, and you'll be dealing with my lawyers for the next decade. We made it inside, and the moment the elevator doors closed, Richard sagged against the wall. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I never wanted this for you. Richard, look at me. I waited until his eyes met mine. I chose this. I chose you. I'm not going anywhere. The board is meeting this afternoon. They're calling for my resignation. My stomach dropped. What? The scandal, the publicity. They're saying I'm a liability, that I've damaged the company's reputation beyond repair. He laughed bitterly. Ironic, considering I built this company from nothing. We'll fight this. Harper, there are 12 board members. I need 7 votes to stay. Right now, I have 3. Then we convince 4 more. My mind was already racing, analyzing angles, building arguments. Who are the swing votes? Margaret Hartford, James Chen, Patricia Woolsworth. and David Kim. Margaret likes me. She said so at the gala, and James seemed reasonable. I pulled out my phone. We have 6 hours before that meeting. Let's use them. What followed was the most intense 6 hours of my professional life. Richard and I split up, each taking 2 board members. I met with Margaret at her office, presenting not just character defense, but hard financial data, showing how Richard's leadership had tripled company value. With James, I played to his business sense, demonstrating how forcing out a successful CEO over a personal scandal would tank investor confidence worse than the scandal itself. By 3 p.m., we'd secured their votes, 6 total. We needed 1 more. The board meeting was brutal. Victoria's lawyer had sent a representative with additional evidence, carefully edited conversations that made Richard look cold and calculating. Several board members openly called for his resignation. Then Margaret Hartford stood up. "I've served on this board for 20 years, she said, her voice commanding attention. "I've watched CEOs come and go, and I've never seen anyone transform this company the way Richard has. Is he difficult? Yes. Demanding? Absolutely. But he's also brilliant, dedicated, and, contrary to these ridiculous accusations, capable of deep loyalty to those who earn it." She turned to me, and I saw approval in her eyes. Miss Monroe proved that to me 3 weeks ago when she defended him without hesitation. And she's proven it again today, spending her afternoon fighting for him instead of protecting her own reputation. That's not the behavior of a gold digger. That's the behavior of someone who genuinely cares. "This isn't about his girlfriend," David Kim interrupted. "It's about his judgment." "Then judge him on his results," I said, standing up even though I probably shouldn't. "Richard Blackwood has generated $12 billion in revenue for this company. He's created 3,000 jobs. He's positioned Sterling & Associates as the premier firm in corporate law. One vindictive ex-fiancé trying to extort money doesn't erase 7 years of excellence." The room went silent. I'd just spoken out of turn in a board meeting where I had no official standing. Richard's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. Patricia Woolsworth cleared her throat. "The girl makes a good point. I move that we table the resignation discussion and allow Richard to address Victoria's accusations through proper legal channels." "I second that motion," Margaret said immediately. "All in favor?" The chairman looked around the room. 7 hands went up. Exactly 7. Richard remained CEO by a single vote. After the meeting, Richard pulled me into his office and kissed me hard, desperately, like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. "You saved me," he whispered against my lips. "We saved each other." I pulled back, cupping his face. "That's what partners do." "Partners," he repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." We stood there, foreheads touching, thinking the worst was over. We were wrong. My phone rang. An unknown number. "Against my better judgment," I answered. "Harper Monroe?" A woman's voice, cold and calculating. "Speaking. This is Victoria Hastings. I think we need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at noon, Café Lucerne, or I release the real story. The one about Richard's offshore accounts and tax evasion. The one that will actually destroy him." The line went dead. I looked at Richard, my hand trembling. "What?" he asked. "What's wrong?" "She's not done with us yet." I walked into Café Lucerne at exactly noon, my phone recording in my pocket, and Richard listening through an earpiece from his car parked a block away. We'd spent all night planning this confrontation. Victoria Hastings was exactly what I expected, polished, beautiful, and cold as ice. She sat at a corner table, perfectly manicured nails tapping against a coffee cup. "Miss Monroe, thank you for coming." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Please sit." I sat, keeping my expression neutral. "What do you want, Victoria?" "Straight to business. I can see why Richard likes you." She leaned back, studying me. "Although like might be too mild a word, he's absolutely smitten. It's almost sweet. You threatened him with tax evasion charges." "I threatened you with them, actually." Interesting how quickly you came running. She sipped her coffee. Tell me, does Richard know about your father? My blood went cold. What? Daniel Monroe, convicted of securities fraud 5 years ago. Served 3 years in federal prison. You changed your last name from Moretti to Monroe, got yourself through law school on scholarships in spite, and buried that scandal deep. Her smile sharpened. But I'm very good at digging. My father's crimes have nothing to do with me. Don't they? You're dating one of the most powerful men in finance. People will wonder if you're following in Daddy's footsteps, using your relationship to gain insider information, to manipulate stock prices. She pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. I have enough circumstantial evidence here to make it look plausible. Even if it's not true, the investigation alone would destroy both your careers. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think like a lawyer instead of a terrified daughter. What do you really want, Victoria? This isn't about money anymore. For the first time, real emotion crossed her face. Rage, barely contained. I want him to hurt the way he hurt me. Do you know what it's like to love someone who can't love you back? To be with someone physically present but emotionally absent? I gave Richard 3 years of my life, and he gave me nothing but expensive gifts and empty promises. So you're blackmailing him for revenge? I'm making him pay for teaching me that love is transactional. She leaned forward. Here's my offer. You leave him. Publicly, dramatically, confirming that your relationship was fake all along. I'll bury the tax evasion story and your father's connection. Richard keeps his company, you keep your reputation. Everyone wins. Except Richard loses me. He never really had you. This whole thing was fake, remember? Her eyes glittered with malice. Unless it's not anymore. Unless you actually fell for him, which would be deliciously ironic. I looked at Victoria, really looked at her, and saw something I recognized. Pain. The kind that comes from loving someone who doesn't know how to love you back. And I realized something crucial. You're wrong about him, I said quietly. Richard did love you. He just didn't know how to show it. He spent his entire life building walls because being vulnerable meant being weak. But he's learning. He's changing. Because of you? She laughed bitterly. How convenient. No, because he finally met someone who refused to accept the walls, who demanded better. I pulled out my phone, stopping the recording, making a choice that could cost me everything. Victoria, I'm going to tell you something, and you can do whatever you want with it. My father's crimes devastated our family. I spent years rebuilding my reputation, proving I wasn't him. When Richard offered me this fake relationship arrangement, I should have said no. But I didn't. Because underneath his armor, I saw someone just as lonely and scared as I was. This is a very touching story. I'm not finished. I met her eyes. You want revenge? Fine. Release your story about my father. Destroy my reputation. But Richard doesn't have offshore accounts or tax evasion schemes. That's a lie, and you know it. So I'm calling your bluff. Victoria's composure cracked. You're willing to sacrifice your career for him? I'm willing to sacrifice my career for the truth. There's a difference. I stood up. Richard Blackwood isn't perfect. He's difficult, stubborn, emotionally stunted, and his coffee taste is terrible. But he's also loyal, brilliant, and capable of profound change when someone gives him a reason. You gave him obligation. I'm giving him choice. That's why this is real. I walked out of the cafe, my hands shaking but my head high. Richard was waiting at the car, his face tense with worry. Did you get what we needed? He asked. I shook my head. I stopped recording halfway through. What? Why? Because she's not the enemy, Richard. She's someone you hurt, even if you didn't mean to. I took his hands. And because I realized something. I don't want to build our relationship on manipulating someone else's pain, even if she's trying to destroy us. We're better than that. Richard stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Harper, She threatened to destroy your career, your reputation, everything you've worked for. I know. And maybe she will. I smiled, even though I was terrified. But I'd rather lose everything and keep my integrity than win by becoming someone I'm not. You're insane. Probably. I kissed him softly. But I learned from the best. For a long moment, Richard just held me, his face buried in my hair. Then he pulled back, and his eyes were suspiciously bright. I don't deserve you. You're right. You don't. But you're stuck with me anyway. I squeezed his hand. So what do we do now? Now? He smiled, that real, unguarded smile I'd fallen in love with. Now we wait and see if your gamble pays off. And if it doesn't, if she releases everything and we both lose everything, then we lose everything together. Together, he repeated. I can live with that. We stood there on the sidewalk, holding each other, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My phone buzzed, an email from an unknown address. My heart stopped as I opened it. It was from Victoria. You win. I'm dropping everything. Not because of your speech. Don't flatter yourself. But because you're right. I deserve someone who chooses me without hesitation. Richard never did. Maybe now I can finally move on. P.S. He's lucky to have you. Don't let him forget it. I showed Richard the email, and he read it twice, like he couldn't believe it was real. It's over, he asked. It's over. He picked me up and spun me around right there on the street, laughing with pure relief and joy. When he set me down, he cupped my face in his hands. Marry me. I froze. What? Marry me, Harper Monroe. Not for show, not for convenience, but because I love you, and I never want to spend another day pretending otherwise. Richard, we've only been really dating for 3 weeks. I don't care. I've wasted enough time in my life being careful and calculated. For once, I want to be reckless. His eyes were intense, serious. Marry me. And looking at him, this impossible, infuriating, wonderful man, I knew my answer. Yes. The word came out before I could overthink it, before logic could override emotion, before fear could steal this perfect moment. Yes. Richard's eyes widened, hope and disbelief warring across his face. You'll marry me? I'll marry you. Not because it's practical or makes sense or follows any logical timeline, but because you're the first person who ever made me want to be reckless. I laughed through sudden tears. And because I love you, even when you're impossible. Especially when I'm impossible, he corrected, then kissed me so thoroughly that several passing pedestrians applauded. When we finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning like idiots, Richard pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. You had a ring? I gasped. How long have you been planning this? Since the board meeting yesterday, when you stood up and defended me without hesitation. He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald-cut diamond that caught the sunlight. I bought it this morning. Called in 3 favors to get it sized and ready by noon. I was going to wait, do this properly with champagne and roses. But then you walked out of that cafe with your integrity intact and your head high. And I thought, why wait? Why waste another second pretending I'm not completely, irrevocably in love with you? He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Richard never did anything halfway. It's beautiful, I whispered, unable to look away from the way it sparkled. So are you. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I need to tell you something. About Victoria, about why our relationship failed. Richard, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because I don't want secrets between us. He took a breath. Victoria was right about me being emotionally absent. After my parents died when I was 22, I convinced myself that caring about people meant giving them power to hurt you. So I built this empire, became successful, dated beautiful women who wanted the lifestyle more than they wanted me. It was safe, comfortable, empty. What changed? You walked into that conference room and refused to be intimidated. You saw through every defense I'd spent years perfecting and demanded I be better. His voice softened. You made me want to be better. Not for appearances or business strategy, but because you deserved someone worthy of your courage. Richard Blackwood, are you going soft on me? Terrifyingly so. He smiled. Fair warning, I'm going to be a disaster at this whole relationship thing. I'll work too much, forget important dates, probably say the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. But I promise you this, I will choose you. Every single day, in every single way that matters, I will choose you. That's all I need. I stood on my toes and kissed him softly. We'll figure out the rest as we go. My phone rang, Vivian's ringtone. I answered on speaker. Please tell me you're not doing something insane, she said without preamble. Define insane, I hedged. Harper Elizabeth Monroe, did you just get engaged? How did you? There are already photos on Twitter. You're trending. Blackwood engagement is #2 worldwide, right below some cat video. She squealed. Oh my God, you're getting married to a billionaire. I'm going to be the maid of honor, right? Tell me I'm the maid of honor. Richard and I looked at each other and laughed. You're the maid of honor, I confirmed. Yes. Okay. I'm coming over tonight with wine and bridal magazines. We have so much planning to do. She hung up before I could protest. Your best friend is intense, Richard observed. Says the man who restructured a $1 billion merger in 4 days. Fair point. We walked back to his car, hands intertwined, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Fake dating turned real, scandals and board meetings, confrontations and confessions. But standing here with Richard, engaged and happy and terrifyingly in love, I knew it had all been worth it. So what now? I asked, as we drove through Manhattan traffic. Do we have a long engagement? Plan some elaborate society wedding that takes a year to organize? Absolutely not. Richard's grin was pure mischief. I was thinking Vegas. This weekend. Elvis impersonator optional, but encouraged. You're serious? When am I not serious? Richard, we can't just... I stopped, really looking at him. Actually, why can't we? Why should we wait and plan and do what everyone expects when we've never done anything the conventional way? That's my girl. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles. Though I should warn you, Margaret Hartford will never forgive us for eloping. Margaret will get over it. We'll throw her a reception later. I leaned my head on his shoulder. Vegas it is. But I'm drawing the line at the Elvis impersonator. We'll see about that. 3 months ago, I'd walked into Sterling and Associates expecting to pay my dues, work impossible hours, and slowly climb the corporate ladder. I never expected to meet a man who would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, ambition, and what it meant to take risks. Richard Blackwood had started as my cruel boss, became my fake boyfriend, and somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, became my future husband. And as we drove through the city where our story began, I realized that sometimes the best plans are the ones you never make. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to say yes to the unexpected, to leap without looking, to trust that the person beside you will catch you when you fall. Richard glanced at me, catching me staring. What are you thinking about? That I'm going to marry you in Vegas this weekend, and it's either the best or worst decision of my life. Definitely best, he said confidently. How do you know? Because I'm always right. You said so yourself. I laughed, swatting his arm. I said no such thing. You implied it, heavily. You're impossible. And you love me anyway. Unfortunately, yes. I kissed his cheek. I really, really do. And as the Manhattan skyline stretched out before us, full of possibility and promise, I knew without a doubt that this was just the beginning of our story. The best parts were yet to come. 2 years later, the conference room on the 47th floor hadn't changed much, but everything else had. Mrs. Blackwood, your 10 o'clock is here, Patricia's voice came through the intercom, and I still felt a small thrill hearing that name. "Send them in, please." I'd become partner at Sterling and Associates 6 months ago, the youngest in the firm's history. Richard had recused himself from the vote to avoid any appearance of favoritism, but I'd earned it on merit alone. 70 successful cases, 3 industry awards, and a reputation for being just as ruthless as my husband when the situation called for it. Speaking of my husband, Richard walked into my office without knocking, carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing that smile he reserved only for me. "Partner meeting doesn't start for another hour. Thought you might need fuel." "You're spoiling me." I accepted the coffee, perfect as always, and he leaned down to kiss me. "That's my job." He perched on the edge of my desk. "How's our little negotiator doing today?" I placed his hand on my rounded belly, where our daughter had been particularly active all morning. "She's got your timing. Kicks hardest during conference calls." "That's my girl." Richard's expression softened in that way that still made my heart skip. Fatherhood was going to wreck him in the best possible way. "Did you finalize the Hartford Foundation donation?" I asked. "Signed this morning. $5 million for women in law scholarships." He squeezed my hand. Margaret cried. Actually cried. I didn't know she was capable of that. The Richard Blackwood Foundation had become his passion project, funding education, supporting small businesses, everything he wished he'd had growing up. The ruthless CEO hadn't disappeared entirely, but he'd learned to balance ambition with compassion, mostly because I reminded him weekly that being successful didn't require being cruel. "Vivienne called," I said. "She wants to know if we've decided on godparents. We have exactly one friend couple we both like. It's not a difficult decision." She's going to cry too. "Everyone cries lately? Is this what happens when you build a reputation for having emotions?" I laughed. "Welcome to being human, Mr. Blackwood." A knock interrupted us. Vivienne herself, holding a tabloid with a mischievous grin. "Have you two seen this?" The headline read, "From fake love to real family, the Blackwood empire expands." Below was a photo of Richard and me at a charity gala last week, his hand protectively on my stomach. "They're still obsessed with the fake dating origin story," Richard muttered. "Because it's romantic," Vivienne insisted. "Cruel CEO meets brave lawyer. Fake relationship becomes real. Scandal brings them closer. Vegas wedding and now a baby. That's movie material." "Please tell me you're not shopping our story to Hollywood," I said. "Not yet, but I know people." After Vivienne left, Richard pulled me close, careful of my belly. "Do you ever regret it? Any of it? Marrying you in Vegas with an Elvis impersonator officiating?" "That, and everything that came after. The scrutiny, the pressure, giving up your privacy. I thought about that first day, walking into the conference room, being humiliated, choosing to fight back instead of backing down. Every choice since then had led to this moment, standing in my corner office, partner at a prestigious firm, married to a man who challenged and cherished me equally, about to become parents. "I regret nothing," I said firmly. "Except maybe your taste in coffee. That first cup you gave me was terrible. That was from my private espresso machine." "I know. I've been meaning to tell you for 2 years." I kissed him before he could protest. "But everything else? The crazy fake dating plan? The scandal, eloping to Vegas? I'd do it all again in a heartbeat? Even the part where I was an arrogant bastard? Especially that part, because it meant I got to watch you become the man you were always capable of being." I touched his face gently. "You were never the monster, Richard. You were just scared. We both were. And now? Now we're still scared. But at least we're scared together." Our daughter kicked again, forcefully, and we both laughed. She was going to be a handful, stubborn like me, brilliant like her father, and absolutely loved beyond measure. "What should we name her?" Richard asked, his hand covering mine on my belly. "I was thinking, Victoria." He pulled back, shocked. "You're joking." "Partially. But she's the reason we're here, in a weird way. If she hadn't pushed us, we might have stayed fake forever. We owe her something. We owe her nothing, Richard said firmly. Then softer. But I see your point. Middle name? Middle name. How about Vivian Victoria Blackwood? Our daughter's going to hate us for those initials. VVB, that's powerful, CEO material. She's not even born yet, and you're already planning her career? I learned from the best. Richard kissed me again, longer this time, pouring 2 years of love and trust and partnership into that single moment. When we broke apart, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I love you, Harper Blackwood, even with your terrible opinions about my coffee. I love you too, even with your terrible work-life balance. I'm getting better at that. You are, I agreed, and he was. Family dinners, weekend getaways, learning to delegate instead of controlling everything. Richard was still intense, still driven, still occasionally impossible, but he was also present, vulnerable, and completely devoted. We'd come a long way from that first confrontation in the conference room, from fake smiles to real love, from professional arrangement to genuine partnership, from 2 broken people building walls to 2 whole people building a life. And as I looked out over Manhattan, the city where our story began, I knew that sometimes the best things in life start with a risk, a challenge, and the courage to answer back when someone tries to break you. I'd walked into Richard Blackwood's life to save his company. Instead, we'd saved each other. Fatin end.